Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's see if we get any more people in.
I can see Emil joining at least.
Oh yeah, he is.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So are we expecting more people to join, or should we start?
I saw that Shruti was writing something in Slack, but I didn't see that she finished it, so I'm not sure if she wanted to add something about her attendance or not. But I haven't heard that anyone else is planning to join. On the other hand, I haven't heard that anyone else is not planning to join either. So.
It looks like Shruti is writing that she cannot join. She won't be able to make the meeting, she writes. So if you hear some violin playing in the background, that's my daughter. I'm trying to sort out if I have a better microphone setting that can be used so we get less disturbance from outside. I'm not sure. Here's Andrea.
I think it's
Hi.
nice with the violin background music. I don't mind.
Yeah, okay. I might be muted most of the time anyway. Let's see.
Oh,
Hello, Andrea.
sorry I'm late. Previous meeting is running late.
You're welcome.
Okay. Should I share the HackMD?
Sounds a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have agenda, specific agenda for this meeting today, but I would suggest maybe having a look at any pending discussion from last time, unless anyone would like to bring up.
Yeah, we can take a look at discussions. And also, maybe if there are PRs that have some comments. I know you, Eric, made some comment on one of my PRs regarding. I'm trying to remember now. Lost for words.
Was it the unit testing in the SDK or something else?
No, it was the not the unit testing, but the markdown files I did. I added some examples based on what we currently have, but you wanted to improve or have continuous discussions on if we really should have it in the outside layer or should move it in.
Right, yes.
So that is might be a good discussion to have, if that's a suggestion at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important suggestion because it will basically affect all the attributes that we try to add in different places. So.
I think maybe a general comment on this meeting. I think we briefly talked about it last Monday SIG meeting. I mean, we need to maybe make a bit clearer focus on, I mean, division on what we should talk about in this meeting compared to the SIG meeting. Because now I haven't been there for several times in this meeting, but I see now that there's been a lot of discussions on the name and the repositories and those things. And I would suggest that we keep those discussions in the SIG, so we focus this on more hands-on work, discussing the protocol, and of course the POCs, I guess, would be suitable to discuss here as well. If that's okay with the rest of you, or
I think
else we
that's
need to
really
find
good.
a better division.
I agree. I think this meeting should focus on the spec itself and the POCs.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So we make sure that we get somewhere with the protocol as well, and not just talk about admin stuff around it.
So to clarify, I pasted in the chat now the pull request I was talking about. So if we want to kind of change this, so we have a discussion before, I can close the pull request and open a new one with correct data if we want to have it that way. So
I'm not sure if we have agreed on what the correct format would be, I guess, because we had a good discussion, I think, 3 meetings ago or something like this. I think, I can never pronounce his name, Alois. Alois was
Alois,
here,
yeah.
and yes, Alois. Basically, we had issues drawing the line between attributes that we need for routing, which should be on top level, and attributes that we don't need for routing, which should be inside the data thing. And it's, I think you commented, Andrea, or someone else, that basically any attribute we look at, we probably could come up with a scenario where we would use that for routing, but that doesn't mean that everything should be on top level. So at least in my recollection, we didn't get past that point in the discussion to come to some sort of conclusion.
If I could say have some input there as well, I think that one way to look at it would be that the data object would have its own schema. I mean, what we're talking about here in the event protocol is really a schema or a specification on what events would look like. And the way in cloud events, as far as I understand at least, is that you can provide a schema on the top level, and that schema is then valid for the data object. So one suggestion would be that anything that we standardize on should actually be in the data object and then have a decent schema specified for it. That's at least one aspect in this discussion, I think.
I mean, one example of something, if we compare it to Eiffel, I think in Eiffel you have a concept called domain, which you basically use to segment the flow of messages in a way to say, okay, this message belongs to this area. That to
Yeah.
me would be something that maybe should go on top level if we want to follow the cloud events idea of having routing and filtering things on top level. I'm not sure if that is adding to the discussion or not, but something like that might have a motivation to be on the top level inside the data object. But we could also say, as exactly as you said, Emil, anything that we standardize on should just go into the data object and we don't touch the top level.
Maybe that's not possible. I mean, we might need to have some more fields on top level than what Cloud Events provides, but yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I think someone said sometime also that extensions to the protocol are often done on the top level, which surprised me at that time a bit. But maybe that is, I'm not sure what Cloud Events says about the differentiation between data object and the top level parameters or properties.
I think extensions are meant extensions of the top level. So if you define a schema for the body, I don't think that necessarily is considered an extension of Cloud Events, because Cloud Events does not mandate anything about what you put in the body. So it's a black box, I think, from Cloud Events point of view.
Okay,
so the only thing
yeah. No,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, then for the extensions that exist, how do those extensions define their specifications, let's say, or their maybe their own schemas, but how do they specify what is needed? Or because I don't think then it is possible to specify a schema for them if they are on the top level.
I pasted the link to where they have the ones today. And if you take a look at them, it's usually, they're pretty small. It's like one or two different add-ons to it. So it's not like it's 40 fields or something. So, but that way, I don't know if they actually need a schema.
But these extensions, yeah, are these extensions part of somehow? They are somehow sanctioned by the Cloud Events themselves because it's part of their repository. Then I guess there might be extensions outside the Cloud Events repository as well, or is everything supposed to be in Cloud Events if there are extensions?
I'm not sure, but I think these at least are extensions that are just have recognized by the Cloud Events. So I think having them there in the repo makes it easier to discover, I suppose. But yeah, so these are attributes that are headed to the top level. Yes, and I think our vocabulary or schema that we define of the type of data that we want to transport on the, in our events does not necessarily have to be, so it's not going to be in its basic definition, I think, associated with Cloud Events. And then we can have a Cloud Events binding, and in this Cloud Event binding, we can identify whether some of the fields needs to be specified as an extension of Cloud Events or not.
So regarding the cloud events extension and what it is, if you go back to the start page there, oh yeah, it's navigate back. It says here in the third paragraph further down, to be included in this document, aside from a normal peer review process, the attributes needs to have at least 2 voting members, organizations, starting the stating their support for this. So these ones seems to be some kind of more official ones, and they have actually like documented inside the cloud event specification. But these ones are on top level. So in my head, if we would create our own protocol and have it inside the data object, we wouldn't need to bother about these extensions, or we might need to put in one field, but that is only like one field. Did that clarify things for you, Emil, about what these extensions are?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort out in my mind and what we should suggest for ourselves, at least, if we should suggest our protocol to be an official extension known to cloud events, or if we should be more, as Andrea said, something that is currently based on cloud events, but should it be really tightly connected to cloud events and could just use some other layer in between tomorrow, maybe, whatever comes up. To me, it feels more natural to go that way, to specify our specification on like the body level or data level.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, then we will have like a dependency currently to cloud events. I mean, somehow down in the protocol hierarchy or the OSI model, but we shouldn't have any reference back from cloud events to us, really. That sounds a bit weird to have that reference, actually, in my mind. If we would consider the cloud events as a transport protocol in between ourselves and whatever message bus or broker is used.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we could follow similar model that cloud events do themselves. They have like the core specification, and then they have the different bindings for AMQP, HTTP, Kafka, and so depending on the transport layer underneath, how the different cloud events fields are mapped to it. And yeah, I mean, the one that we used in the POC, of course, is the HTTP protocol binding. But there are the ones, and when we use cloud events, we benefit from the ability also to use these different bindings. So which is why. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
But yeah, I was going to say that doesn't mean that we cannot have other kind of bindings, and especially because the CI/CD space is not exclusively cloud native. So, I mean, I think ideally the kind of vocabulary that we are setting up should be usable for other non-cloud native scenarios as well. So in those scenarios, cloud events might not be the best protocol for communication.
I was thinking of that for these event format specifications that exist, the Avro and JSON and Protobuf, for example. What do they really dictate? Is that the format of the top level or the data level, or all of it? Or, I mean, we said now we should at least start with having our definition in JSON. But are we somehow bound to using one of these event formats? Or I'm not sure what that means. I mean, it's not really a protocol binding in the stack going downwards in the OSI model. Rather, event format rather dictates our syntax, it seems. Or am I misunderstanding this?
Based on my previous reading, I would say this dictates how you send the whole cloud event, including the top level. But I think the cloud event spec states that inside the data attribute, we can put whatever we want. It can be XML or JSON or YAML or anything that can be transported. So I don't think this would dictate anything on what goes on inside the data attribute. I would guess that this list is just if you want to send cloud events as a Kafka or on a Kafka bus or whatever it's called, this is how you do it. If you want to send it over NATs, this is how you do it.
That's my understanding of it also.
Okay, good.
Right, and the current SDK, also the PSC as a consequence, is mapping all the fields that we defined as cloud event extensions. But yeah, I think that's not the way forward in my mind. So we'll have to change that, but we have a substantial rework that we want to do in the SDK anyways, because there is a lot of code duplication and that's only part of the protocol supported there anyways. So I think if we agree on a format or a schema that we want to use for our cloud events binding, we can then write the SDKs accordingly.
So maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit, but would it be fine as an outcome of this discussion to say that the CD events specification will dictate a number of JSON objects and their schema, which are then used when we come to cloud events? They are sent in the data attribute and the data schema attributes. Something like that as a working assumption to start with. Or is that skipping too many steps of the discussion?
I think we can make such a proposal, at least. Of course, we need to make sure everyone is aligned with it. I'm pretty sure that that's not how Captain does it today, at least. But maybe they are okay with doing it that way anyway. But of course, we need to sync with them to see if they have any objections to it or any other comments on it. I'm not sure actually how the Jenkins plugin was implemented this summer, Google Summer of Code. I'm not sure, Oleg, if you are anyhow aware of how the Jenkins plugin was handling these parts.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with the implementation right now. But yeah, what I can say that this plugin is rather a prototype at the moment. So once the specification gets closer to the final version, we will be aligning it anyway. For me, currently, it's not a concern. And yeah, I need to look into the code to see how the events are handled and produced there.
Okay, sounds good.
Still catching up on this topic.
Right, but I think in my mind, the basic specification of the protocol should really be similar or along the lines of what we have today, where we define the list of events that we want to have, and for each event we define like mandatory attributes with their meaning and optional attributes with their meaning. And then we can have like I would have one document which is valid across all the various event types, which defines how this is mapped, for instance, into a JSON body. That can be included then into a cloud events, if it makes sense. But I think that the very basic documentation should be similar to what we have today. I mean, we can make it in tabular format, and we might have to do some adjustment, but I think the format that we have today is, I think it matches to the core specification that I would like to see in the spec in the new repo as well. And yeah.
Oh, I was just about to say, Eric, your suggested statement there. Did anyone write that down, or should we write it somewhere on?
I'm
you have
writing
it
a
there.
proposal in the notes.
Yeah,
We'll see if
okay,
I
I did that,
get
yeah.
it.
Sounds good. I was just reflecting on the comment you had in the beginning on how Eiffel does it, for example, with this domain parameter. I would maybe suggest that we start with not. I mean, trying this out, this statement, and see if it holds also for any data that is currently held in Eiffel events, so it's compatible with that. For example, the domain ID would be part of the routing key as well, and could in this spec, I would say, could maybe be part of the event type itself, where we actually intend to have inverse DNS lookup, and maybe the domain name could actually be part of that somehow.
Yeah, and
so
I saw
let's see
also
what
that, like, yes, sorry. I saw, I mean, there are a couple of extensions, as Matthias showed us already, and one of them was called something with partitioning. So it might also be that if we don't find something in the core cloud events spec, we might find something in an extension, and then we can just say, when you're using our protocol, you also need to support these cloud events extensions, because we will send data through those extensions, instead of trying to come up with our own solutions for it, just as a primary avenue.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a very good idea, and that's another view on extensions. I think that is quite good to have, maybe, that the extensions could actually be seen as cloud events, but an amendment to cloud event, but we do something on top of it, at least. Or yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Right. So what we're saying is also that if we identify that there is a need for an extension and none of the existing extension fits the job, we might go ahead and actually try and contribute an extension to cloud events, like a general purpose cloud events, and then make use of it.
Sounds good, but should we pin that down also? That as you said, because it was a good statement, I think. So we have that if we want to, because for me, in my mind, it means that if we want to do something on top level, we should contribute with an extension.
All right. That's great. Sounds like we are quite aligned or agreeing on this. So I think next steps would probably be to try and map the events and fields that we have identified so far into some format, probably JSON format, and I guess I'm using some kind of schema, JSON schema to define how it looks like. And then we could use that schema to generate the SDKs. And once we have that, we should be able to try and rerun our existing POCs with the updated SDK and see if we can still maintain the same functionality.
That sounds a good way.
Would
Do we need to
someone
pin
like
that down also, or?
Sorry, Matthias, could you repeat your question?
Should we pin down that way forward also?
Sure. So document how the vocabulary draft maps to JSON. Schema, options there. Is used for use API. I don't know if anyone has better suggestions here.
I know in AFL we generate code based on JSON schemas. Unfortunately, I don't have that in my head, top of my head right now, what we use there. But you can generate code based on schemas, I know.
So okay, so I think this would take us forward to, in the sense of the format that we want to target. It does not take us much forward in terms of content necessarily. I mean, if we come up with a way to generate the code, I guess it would allow us then to make an SDK which is more complete in terms of the events that we've defined now. But I think there is a lot of there are other areas of the protocols that needs to be further investigated. I mean, we had some previous discussions about links between events and how to manage extensions, for instance, and context. And one of the questions I added the KubeCon when I presented this this protocol was how to deal with differences in implementation. It was specifically about SCM, so GitHub and GitLab, where you have different data model, and how do we handle that in the protocol? And my answer was that we trying to come up with a list of fields that can be matched to as many implementation as possible, but then we'll provide an extension mechanism so that a specific platform can transport extra data if they want to. And I think this is something that will be needed, and we need to specify how we handle that in the protocol.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good thing to look into as well. And therefore the naming of the vocabulary used. I mean, we had this Rosetta Stone document in the interoperability SIG. I think we should revisit that and use that as a base when we decide on some generic names for these things. For example, the SCM parameters or attributes. But also we should look into what SPDX uses for similar things, and maybe others as well. I was thinking now, it sounds like we are approaching some kind of decisions now, which we haven't really done before, I believe. So I was thinking, where should we note such decisions? We had a proposal now on using the data object in a certain way. And I guess we should note that as a decision when we have taken it, of course, somewhere. So maybe that's input to the SIG meeting to decide on or describe where to note such decisions that we take.
We did discuss a while ago during the summer, I think, how the work group takes decisions. And I think it might have been like one of the primary outcomes of this working group is to package decisions for a quick check in the SIG. But maybe that's going too far. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, when it comes to smaller stuff, we have to be able to take our own decisions. But
oh yeah, for sure. But maybe these more groundbreaking ideas or rules, we might need to sync them on the SIG as well, because there are some other people in the SIG maybe that are normally on this meeting, so we make a broader consensus on those decisions. I think I'm not sure, at least so far I think it's good that we take those decisions in the SIG, but it's very good that they can be prepared from here. Then you never know what happens. Of course, when we have the new project in place, if we have a CDF project for the protocol itself, it might be that, of course, such decisions are taken in that project and not by any SIG in the CDF anymore. But that's for later, I guess.
I think the discussion you might have had, Eric, was that the discussion I pasted in the chat?
Yes, exactly.
All right.
But then to answer your question there, Emil, about where we document our decisions, isn't that going to be part of the protocol itself? I mean, if we decide that we should use a specification as in the proposal here, doesn't that go into the specification as a?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Of course, that sounds reasonable. So it should be probably stated in like a design rule or decision or whatever in the protocol repository when we end up there eventually.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree on this, and I think yeah, every time we take this kind of decision, we can incrementally add them to sentences or paragraphs where relevant in the spec, so we keep track of them, and we can always modify them over time. But I mean, in terms of governance, we can start lightweight for the project, I think, but even if we take a decision in the working group, I would say that we can still we will still make a pull request for documenting the decision in the spec, and that pull request will have to be reviewed by the other members of this group. So, and when we have the project, we can decide at some point rules that we want to have for making changes to the specification. If you want to have a certain amount of reviewers, diversity across companies, or this kind of rules we can set up over time.
Yeah, but until we have a new repository for the protocol, should we just note those decisions and in the SIG minutes of meetings, or and this proposal that we have now from the work group, should we just bring that up to the SIG meeting, or should we send it out on the mail list, or of course we can spread it on Slack as well or whatever?
I mean,
otherwise this proposal just stay here.
One convenient way that might be a bit cumbersome is to actually create a PR with this proposal and then refer to the PR everywhere. And then people can, have their say in discussions on it in the PR. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah. I think a PR can be used at least here in the vocabulary group where we discuss the proposal, and then the SIG should maybe just then take the decision or not somehow. So it could be prepared in a PR written by this group maybe.
Yeah, because I thought if you're bringing something up to the SIG and you want decisions, then people might want to read up on it, and then we can say we're going to try to make a decision on this PR, and they can read into it.
And then I guess we would have a document in the Git repo somehow for all decisions, but which such a PR would affect.
Andrea, you were saying something.
I was going to say, I think that I mean, this group should be able to take decisions about the protocol and the vocabulary, and I mean, write PRs, and I fear that if we make proposed decisions related to the protocol here and need to validate them back in the main meeting and then come back here and then come back to the main meeting, it will make things more complicated, slow us down, and I'm not sure it would provide much value. I mean, if folks are interested in discussing the specific of the protocol, and then we should make it clear, as Emil was suggesting in the beginning, what is the scope of each meeting. And so if you say, okay, this is where we discuss the vocabulary and the protocol format and the technical aspect of that. I think that's where we should take the decisions as well. But maybe not.
Sounds good.
Could you
Get your
send the-
ideas. Yep. Go ahead, Oleg.
Just wanted to say that I agree that this group should be empowered to make decisions, and if it requires asking for a mandate anywhere, including, for example, CDF, TUC, or other member users, then probably it should be just brought up explicitly, and then it's up to these members to either participate or not.
I mean, if we want to have, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, introducing some kind of a review cycle would be nice. But yeah, one of the ways what you actually review a particular pull request that might delay the process a lot, or just a new version of the specification. So, for example, yeah, the group works on a specification for something like 1 month, creates a new version, let's say, in a branch, and then submits it all together, basically for review and sign off by all members, and then let's say 1 week to provide feedback, and then it's landed.
Because if we feel that we want to have additional things, I guess we
Yeah,
can
so
post the PRs on Slack, and people can then add into the comments. And if they don't have anything to add in, then they've at least got the chance.
yeah, so what we experienced in Jenkins, we have Jenkins enhancement proposals, and I would say that even if everyone wants to help, the feedback cycle is extremely slow. So if you rely on reviewing every particular pull request, it will take ages to get any specification approved. So basically, we ended up that there is a champion that leads a development of particular job. Then at some point, when this champion believes that job is ready for review and approval, then it gets raised to wider community that makes this approval only once. But in middle cycles, it's basically just the open document for collaboration. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I'm trying to think. We do have TEP in Tecton as well. I guess it's similar in a way. Yeah, so we do add a feature, specific feature to the protocol. So let's say we have the initial protocol and we add support for links. So we need to iterate a bit, and we could do that in a PR or in a document. We can, in ACMD, we can choose the format that we prefer. And once the small group feels like the PR or the proposal is ready, we can extend it to a larger group. That was roughly a proposal.
Yes.
Like, right?
Right. So basically, the idea is to not slow down small changes, because if you expect all stakeholders to sign off every pull request, then it will become a nightmare. But yeah, just maybe separating some specification parts and separate proposals and going through a more standard proposal there. I think it would be the best option. It's nice to keep all the review process public in a way that whomever wants to contribute, they are welcome. But it shouldn't delay the group.
Okay, so what I captured is review cycle that are required after the decisions. Potential process we could use for larger features and spec. We require a larger review audience so we can work on the doc or PR or HackMD until a feature is ready for review from a larger audience. Small changes are done in PRs and approved by the small group directly. So does this make sense?
It makes sense. So maybe it makes sense to explicitly that yeah, there is a kind of approval process for the larger group. So for example, in Jenkins, what we do, we put it on the developer mailing list at least 1 week ahead of a governance meeting. And then in the governance meeting, if there is a consensus in the mailing list, we basically rubber stamp it. If not, we discuss and agree on the next decisions.
Yeah, I guess we need to identify the right audiences, who is in what group, and this kind of governance decisions. Yeah.
Decisions are easy while everyone agrees. Okay.
Yeah, this is partly what we started discussing also in the last meeting about what to put in the spec repo in the new project. If you wanted to have there like a community.md or governance.md where we specify this kind of processes as well. Yeah.
And so governance MD is expected in the CDF situation checklist. It's for CD events, it's a bit too early to plan for that, but if it's available from very beginning, it's nice. And since it's a specification, I believe that process needs to be bulletproof from the very beginning.
Yes. I mean, we can create the structure, and I think in the beginning it might be the content might be simple, and then we can add over time. I don't want to do too much content ahead of time without the right context to, to take the right decisions. All right. Okay, I guess we're getting closer to the hour. One thing that I wanted to ask is whether well, first is whether it's okay. Should we go ahead and start creating this repos in the new GitHub org? Setting up the Apache license, creating the readme.md, and importing some of the content already. And this is one thing. I mean, I'd be happy to do some of the work there, setting up kind of the basic structure for the spec repo.
Yeah, we actually at least defined or settled on the name for the repository itself on the last SIG meeting. or the proposal there. I haven't created it yet. I intended to do, but I haven't yet done it. So the proposal was to create it and call it spec, just as
Right.
Cloud Events as it. And then the SDKs should be called, the SDK repos should be called SDK dash something, where something is the language or whatever the SDK is for. So those are the current best thinking on the repository names there.
I think both the spec and the SDKs were following the Cloud Events way of naming it.
Yes.
Okay, so you want to do that work, Emil? Start creating the repo, setting up the scaffolding for the repo, or shall I do it, or anyone else would like to do it?
Maybe you have more time than I have, so then you're free to do it. No problem at all. I'm not sure if I need to give you some authority to be able to do it, but for sure you can do it for me. That's no problem at all.
Okay. Yeah, I can start setting it up. I'd like just to start using it, so we don't need to. We don't have to do homes. Okay. The other thing for the protocol format, I wanted to ask if there is anyone who would like to lead that bit of work. Investigate about JSON schema, and I mean, it's something that we can do collaboratively, of course, but yeah, I just wanted to ask if anyone's felt like you want to drive that part of the work, come up with some proposal, and we can discuss together. Because I feel like we discussed a bit in 2 or 3 meetings about that topic, but I think we need to get more information. So someone of us, or maybe all of us, could do some research and come up with a proposal. Till next time, Eric. If it's no one who can do it right now, I think it's fine too. We just wanted to ask if anyone wanted to drive it. All right.
I'll try to chip in there, but I don't want to promise anything.
Thanks, Matthias. Yeah, I think then we adjourn next time, and we have a few things that we discussed today. I think most of them are captured in the notes, and where it makes sense, I'll try to make PRs to capture them in the repos as well, as we said. All right. Anything else for today? Any last thoughts?
Not for me.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Very good discussions today. Talk to you later.
Yeah, talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.